Hippity hoppity, Hitler's on his way. Plus, we have more Oscar talk. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movie.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Film Critics Weekly. It's the White Guy Show again today with me and Demetri Panos here for Film Critics Weekly.
Hey, I'm
talking about Oscars and Hitler. So there you go. Oscars and Hitler. What better show can you ask for than those two topics? There you go. So I, of course, am Scott Menzel, founder of the Los Angeles Online Film Critics Society, and with me, as always, if you didn't take it from that introduction, Demetri Panos.
Hey, everybody. Hey, folks. And you know, the white guys talking movies sounds like a new show.
Yeah, white. You know, Two Jews on. You know, there was a YouTube channel, Two Jews on Film. It's unfortunate you're not Jewish. We could have brought that back, but
Jew and a Greek.
There you go.
There you go.
So we want to open up this show today, of course, talking about the movie pick of the week, and then we're going to go into more of our Oscar conversation. All right, so there was a lot of movies that came out this week, and the group decided to go with the indie movie for this week, and that, of course, is Jojo Rabbit. So congratulations. Fox Searchlight, Taika Waititi, and Scarlett Johansson, and the entire cast and crew of that movie. You are the movie pick of the week for LAOFCS.
Well deserved, in my opinion.
There you go. So we're going to do a very quick review of this movie. Demetri, what is this movie about? What is Jojo Rabbit about?
Jojo Rabbit, it's about little Jojo Bretzler, 10-year-old Jojo Bretzler, who wants to badly be part of the Nazi party, and he's on the eve of going to a Hitler Youth camp, and he can't. His enthusiasm. He's so stoked for this that his imaginary friend is Hitler, played by Taika, and the movie is a journey. It's a journey, and it's so many things to me. It's a satire. It's endearing. It has emotional resonance, and it's, in a sense, can you call it a coming-of-age story if it only spans 6 months out of a 10-year-old's life? And I say yes, you can, because I do believe, after watching it the second time, it's like, this is a coming-of-age story, because our little Jojo Bretzler has an arc, a full-on arc, and I really believe that this movie, and I know you disagree, but the movie, to me, I found it to be humorous. At times, I asked myself, should I be laughing at this? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. A, why? It's hysterical. B, Mel Brooks has always been making fun of Nazis as well, and other people too, from Stanley Kubrick and, with Dr. Strangelove, which I say, from a satire point of view, this is this generation's, in a sense, Dr. Strangelove. And I really, watching it the second time, it emotionally resonated with me, even more so the first time. I picked up on little cues, and there are wonderful payoffs, I felt, in this movie. And to go on little Jojo's journey, it really is an arc, and it's one that's very well paid off. I think, so for me, it ends up in definitely my top 10, perhaps even my top 5.
Interesting.
Yes.
So this should be said, me and Demetri both saw this movie originally at the world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival. I had very high expectations for this film, as I think you did as well. Taika Waititi is always a director who I think makes great comedies, very, very good in terms of indie films. Been a big fan of his work, What You Do in the Shadows and The Hunt for Wilder People. Really liked his work. So therefore, having those as examples, I went into this film, and the idea of making a movie about Hitler I was on board for this movie. I was so totally sold about this movie. And then I sat down, I watched it, and I know you think it works very well as a comedy. There's been a lot of debate about this movie, whether it works as a comedy and satire, and I fall on the other end of the spectrum where I say it does not work as a comedy or a satire, but rather a dramatic film. And my biggest takeaway from the movie after seeing it, because I did go back and watch it again because I felt crazy. I felt like a crazy person because so many of my friends and people of LAOFCS, who I value their opinions greatly, told me, like, I really, really love this movie. I really, really enjoyed it. So I wanted to give it a second look, and I went in with an open mind. And I watched it again, and I picked up definitely some stuff with the relationship aspects, which only reinforced my feelings that this movie should have been a dramatic movie instead of a comedy, because the drama of it works so well. It works well as a mother-son story. It works well as a boy meets girl story. I love that aspect of it. When it comes to the jokes in this movie, I feel like it's a combination of a Mel Brooks movie and a Wes Anderson movie. And the way I can best describe this movie is that Taika saw a Wes Anderson movie, and he remembered the producers, and he said, you know what would happen if we put those two in a blender? That's what we're going to make with this movie. And again, it works for some people. I didn't dislike this movie. I just was disappointed by it.
There was something, I'm going to bring up something that you said that I don't, or that I do actually agree with, because you used a word safe.
Yes.
You felt it was safe. And after the first time watching it, I remember you saying that, and believe it or not, I do listen to you. I do listen to other people's opinions, and I take it to heart, and I thought about it, and I agree. Yes, I do think to an extent it's safe, but I think that too is why it has a good shot of it, at the very least, being nominated for Best Picture. Making fun of Germans, making fun, it doesn't necessarily make fun of the Holocaust as much as it makes fun of Nazism. But for me, that was the satire, because this movie really is it's a campaign for anti-hate.
Right.
And there are two movies that have come out this year. This one included, and also Joker, where they're time periods. They take place in a specific time, but they mirror today's society. Mm-hmm. And that I found, especially after watching it twice, I felt that too was something else, that social relevance to the movie, to today, that Jojo Rabbit has, because it takes place in the 30s, 40s. That too, I really enjoyed, and that's where I found the satire.
Yeah.
But you're right. I do agree with you. Like, you felt it should have had more punch, where I believe I felt like it was right on target. But I understand what you're saying about.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting that you brought up Jojo Rabbit and Joker, because I think Jojo Rabbit is the type of film that is what people look for when they go to the movies, right? Like, they want to feel good, they want to have some lighthearted laughs, and they love the characters, like the two little kids in this movie, Thomas and Mackenzie, who was in Leave No Trace, which, if you have not seen Leave No Trace, do that. It's very great, and it really got no buzz last year when it came out. And Roman Griffin Davis, who plays Jojo, also very good. These two kids, to me, really elevate the film, that combined with Scarlett Johansson's performance. But going back to the point about Jojo versus Joker, is that Joker basically, a lot of people have said this, where it holds up a mirror to society and makes us kind of reflect. And a lot of people don't like that. We don't like looking at ourselves in the mirror and kind of saying oh, this is dark. It doesn't have a happy ending. It kind of leaves you very, very cold, and kind of leaves you thinking oh, that was kind of messed up. Is that really how we treat people? It's so dark and gritty, and and there's no hope in the world. Where this movie just is oh, let's dance and hug and smile, and there's nothing wrong with two of these movies existing. And that's why I think it's interesting that they've come out a couple weeks apart and they're having very similar reactions.
Absolutely.
Which is amazing because there's so many people who really don't like Joker because of the fact that it's so dark, and they're like, oh, there's no context to this movie. It's just hating. It's hating. And then other people are saying this movie offers like free hugs and things of that nature, Jojo Rabbit, which I do agree with. And it's funny to me because I watched this movie, especially for the second time, and I just found so much stuff to admire about it. Yeah. But I can't get past Taika. I can't get past him because he is him and Rebel Wilson Rebel Wilson is just, even with the German accent and whatnot, is just doing a Rebel Wilson with a German accent. Right. She's saying a random line. She walks onto the scene, says some random line, walks out of the scene, and that's it. And that's kind of all she does throughout this entire movie. And then Taika just feels like a recycled. If Saturday Night Live was doing a sketch on Hitler, it would be Taika Waititi's version of Hitler. I literally, and every time he popped up, I just kind of said, oh man, he's back. And again, I know, people disagree with me on it. I just didn't think it worked well in the tone of shifting. Yeah. But then, in the second half of the movie, I wonder if you agree with me on this. To me, the second half of the movie is so much stronger than the first half of the movie.
Well, the second half of the movie, a major turn happens.
Right.
No, spoiler free over here, but a couple of major turns happen in the second part of the movie. And where I disagree with the Taika part is, and Taika has said this of himself, you're playing Hitler, and he's like, yeah, I could see of no bigger insult to the man other than me playing him. And I felt the buffoonish quality to Hitler. Like when they were running through the woods with Jojo and his imaginary Hitler friend, I thought that was hysterical. But two, in the movie, his imaginary friend, like Jojo, is going through changes. He's going through changes of perception. And there's one scene in particular in which that scene is really dominant. Again, I don't want to give anything away, but I believe that Hitler character was changing along with our character and the way our character was mentally processing his imaginary friend. So in the dancing and everything like that, look, you don't want to see me dancing because I am a white man with no rhythm. but I will say the reason for the dancing, from within itself, is inspiring. And two, and again, it was one of those little things that it's like from a screenplay standpoint, he hits all his plot points very on purpose, very assuredly.
Yes.
And there's a reason. There's little waste in the film too. This movie does not overstay its welcome. This is just a hair under 2 hours.
It's I think an hour and 45 before the credits start rolling.
So again, it doesn't overstay it. It didn't overstay its welcome for me, even watching it a second time, and I would most likely get it on Blu-ray. I just felt that these little things that happen within the movie, there are certain nice emotional payoffs, and you go, yes. There's symbolism. There's certain things like that I believe, too, can relate to today as far as hate, as far as freedom, as far as all of these things. And I liked what it had to say, and I picked up a little bit more on it, and I got a little bit more emotional watching it the second time that I didn't pick up watching the first time.
I was thinking about this when I was watching again yesterday. So obviously the run-on gag in the movie is that Hitler is his imaginary friend, right? But it's a little problematic, right? Because of the fact that the other people in the world acknowledge that Hitler exists. So that's kind of confusing a little bit, right? If you think about it, if the character essentially exists and all these people who are not Jojo are mentioning him, there's this strange, I don't know, I was just thinking about it, I've never seen something do this before, where there's somebody exists, but then is also imaginary character. How does that work?
Well, I mean, again, I think this is great anatomy of a movie discussion, but we'll have you back on for that. But I think for me, anyways, is for a 10-year-old boy who really wanted to be a part of the Nazi Party.
Yeah.
It was his goal in life, and he wanted to go to the Hitler Youth. To him, Hitler is an idol. And I think for a 10-year-old boy, I mean, what do I know? Other than myself being 10, I can't speak for you. But, you know, you could imagine that if he idolized Hitler as being his superhero, I could see 10-year-old boys thinking they've befriended Spider-Man or the Hulk or Superman or being Batman, you know, whatever is in a kid's imagination. And that's how I took it. Not just because, I mean, all of those superheroes, quote unquote, exist to an extent, but you also can look at people who you idolize who exist in today's world,
right,
and bring that out as, I idolize this person so much. Like some people, there was a time where people idolized the President of the United States, or
yes,
they idolized
yes,
astronauts, or they idolized certain kind of heroes of the day, or actors, for say. So who knows in the imagination of a 10-year-old child?
Right.
It didn't bother me because we knew that Hitler existed. The characters know.
Right.
How, and that's the other thing too, because some characters were very much Nazis and very much lock and step with what was going on, where the other people in the movie who are very much aware of Hitler have a completely different perception of the man. So it's interesting that little Jojo, who's a 10-year-old, who has really at 10 years old doesn't have the wherewithal yet. He doesn't have the life within him, the life experience, I mean, to say what's good and what's bad yet. And that to me is the journey. That's the journey that he goes about what hate is and what it can mean. And that's why I also saw that his imaginary friend was changing perception towards Jojo, and Jojo was having this all in his head as a 10-year-old. I mean, it's pretty heady stuff when you're talking about a 10-year-old kid.
But when you think about it, listen, the points that you made, right? Like it's valid because you don't, like, we don't know celebrities, and a lot of people worship celebrities, musicians, whatever, right? So I understand that play, okay? But when you think about it from an imaginary friend's perspective,
right,
I feel like there's something else in the movie that it does kind of like doesn't dive deep enough into. Okay. Because like if the person does exist,
yes,
then it's not technically an imaginary friend.
Well, it is to him, because how does Hitler exist to this 10-year-old Jojo Rabbit?
Right.
He only knows of the Nazi Party because he was born, raised in Germany. He only knows of the Nazi Party in that reality as being right in might,
right,
being together. He doesn't know. He's unawares of the flip side of what Hitler means. And to Jojo, what better friend? Like, if you're going to idolize him and you make Hitler look like a cartoon character,
right,
like you know, like that purple dinosaur, like, because that's what he is in a sense.
Oh yeah,
and he's Barney, but that's how a 10-year-old, because a 10-year-old's really not paying attention to the newsreels as much. And again, if you're in Nazi Germany and you are a Nazi, you look at Hitler as one way, and other people look at him in a completely different way. I just feel that for a 10-year-old boy who can't really comprehend, right, for him, his Hitler is much different than any other Hitler we've ever seen before. Right. Except as the movie.
I guess I would have liked to see more of that. You know, like it's something else where, you know, upon watching it, you know, again for a second time, and this is why I highly recommend when you watch movies, if you like them, or if you feel like you miss something and other people say they love something, it's always great to go back and watch movies again, because you can have conversations like this. To me, watching that and just there was to me, it didn't bother me the first time. This was something that I actually picked up that bothered me a little bit more the second time.
Yes.
Because I'm watching it and I'm like, well, this person does exist, and everyone else does acknowledge that this person exists. And then I was thinking, like you were saying, okay, is this a statement on like how we worship or idolize celebrities or people in power, like the president, stuff like that. But then I felt like there wasn't enough discussed about that either, like where it just it was surface level. And
that goes back to your point of safe.
Yeah, and I know it does, and that's where I keep when I watch this movie again. Right. It keeps giving me this illusion that it's pushing boundaries, that it's being daring, but really, it's all conventional. It's all surface level stuff. It's not digging deep.
Well, that's where we agree to disagree to an extent. But again, you're right about conversation. I want to say yes. I can't agree with you more about the statement about rewatching movies.
Yes.
It is great. Like we each have seen Joker a couple of times, and to me that movie got better as you watch it. Movies like music too. I think that they grow, they can become better, especially if you give them time to breathe. Like for Jojo Rabbit, for example, I think is a decent example, whereas we saw it in Toronto, which seems like it was decades ago, but it was only like a couple of months ago, right?
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it.
It was
since
only
then.
a month ago, a month and a half.
A month and a half. Oh, geez, not even a couple of months, right? So I had that buffer, so going into it again and rewatching, I was like, wow. And I bet, because I want to see Parasite again.
Yeah.
And that, too, is another very well nuanced movie where little things, could pay off later on. But that's what I love about movies and even music, because you can put them aside for a while, and then you can go months, years later, you can listen to a song or watch a movie, and it's almost as if you're watching with new eyes or listening with new ears. The movie or song will take on a whole new life of its own as we grow older. And that's one of the beautiful things about the medium of cinema, is that if it leaves that lasting impression and then you go back and see it and you can pick up something else. Sometimes, though, on movies, you can find things that you go, okay, maybe I was wrong in my original assessment, but that's the beautiful thing about this art form. Is that you're able to do it. With Jojo Rabbit, I did end up liking it more, only because I saw little emotional, dramatic things that I knew I watched the movie, but I picked up on them. They were more. They were brought out more for me because I had already. You have that like waves I can see again, but you have that first viewing. The movie washes over you. Yeah. It's like a wave. And you're like, wow, you have to decompress it, analyze it. But when you go in for that second time again, you already are knowing what to expect. So more aspects can come out. Yeah. No, and I'm glad you pointed this out. I mean, to be fair to this movie, I'm never going to come out of this movie and say I love it. Right. I'm going to come out of this movie after a second viewing and say that it's a good movie. It had the potential to be great, but it didn't get there for me. Right. But that being said, I do still recommend this movie, and I do feel like I enjoyed it a little bit more the second time around, even though I found more that I didn't like about it. But I also realized that some of the things that I was kind of downplaying a little bit, like the emotional ties, how strong they were and how effective they were. Yes. So that's why I said, like, I think this movie works from a dramatic standpoint more than a comedy. But at the end of the day, what would you give it? We're doing I gave it out of my own review system, which is my finger system, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. I gave it 5. I gave it the high 5. So so it's an A for you? It's an A for me. Okay. Yeah, it's an A for me. I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to probably give it a B. A B? Yeah. Not even a little B plus? No, not a B plus. No. Definitely not a B plus. No. That raises it up like in my rating scale. I do out of 10. It's like an extra 0.5. And I was actually debating about giving it a B minus originally. Second viewing brought it up to a B. So, okay, fair. But yeah, so I think this is a movie that you should definitely see. My biggest takeaway from this movie is to see how well it holds up in the years to come. Yeah. Because is it going to be another movie that we talk about a lot now?
but it's going to end up being like a artist or a green book, something that just kind of, it was there that year, and then we don't really talk about it all that much.
That'll be interesting too, and it will be interesting to see audience reaction across the board for this movie and how they're going to perceive it. Again, I think we talked regarding like Joker in this movie. They're movies of their times. Time being right now.
Yes.
And Taika has said this about Jojo Rabbit, and that's what, by placing it back in that era, to me, it ends up making it timeless. As I said, I'm going to buy it on Blu-ray. I really hope they don't cheap out on special features on this, because I think the filming of this movie, to me, would be a fascinating look from script to screen, and how Taika put this all together and got the cast together, and just filming this movie, I think would be, I really, just don't cheap out. They've been cheaping out on special features on Blu-ray. So I'll get it. For me, there's a rewatchability, obviously. For you, well, you saw it twice.
Yeah.
That's all one can ask.
And I mean, that's my goal this year, and then we'll move on from this topic. But one of the things that I would tell you, and this is something that I think is very important as a critic, is that, as Demetri kind of mentioned earlier, is that you watch a movie once, and if you consider it one of your best of the year, you should have no problem whatsoever going back and watching a second time to see exactly where it will fit in that list, or if it drops off that list. Because I do think that does happen. But that's just a tip for me. Always see a movie twice, especially if it's something that you feel like you really love, or you have a strong disagreement on, where others say that they like
unless it's a movie like The Lighthouse.
No,
which
you don't have to. You don't listen. You don't have
again.
to. No, there's no reason to see like Not Another Teen Movie over and over again, or like something like that. But there's a reason to see these types of movies.
This one, I was happy to have been invited and to go see it again. So, and I know I'm looking forward to seeing Parasite again too.
Yeah.
So, all right.
So now we're going to move over to our awards coverage, our Oscar predictions, and as per usual, we're going to continue on the trend of deep diving into the studios instead of actually doing it as the categories. We're going to be starting to do that in the next couple of weeks, but we wanted to go through all of the studios individually. And kicking off today, we're going to talk about Universal Studios. They have quite a few movies that they're hopeful. Very few that I think are actually going to make a dent whatsoever this award season.
I agree. Looking at this list, I do agree with you.
So, out of the ones on this list, which one or two do you feel has the greatest chance of being nominated for any category?
Okay, so just so that our listening audience, viewing audience knows, so on the list is Us, 1917, which hasn't come out yet. Neither has Queen and Slim. Cats hasn't come out yet. And then the movies that have come out, well, Us has come out, How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, Abominable, and then The Secret Life of Pets 2. Of this list, to me, the one that's worthy, the one that's worthy of any type of nomination would be How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, for animation, for Best Animated. I'm not sure how it'll fare up against Frozen 2, but to me, the How to Train Your Dragon series as a series is fantastic. As a standalone movie, I think this is fantastic. They really wove an amazing series in this movie, and talk about emotional resonance and relevancy today about friendship. How to Train Your Dragon has left it flies on a high note for me, and it is the one movie that I feel deserves to be in the Best Animated category.
I completely agree, and and this is where the problem lies. Outside of Toy Story, which Toy Story 4, which is also going to be in this category. I don't think that there has been another animated trilogy that has been as strong as How to Train Your Dragon.
No, this reminds me of Pixar.
Yeah, and
that's
it does.
That's
how
written.
Good it is.
That's how good.
And the problem with it is the fact that it's going up against Pixar.
Yeah.
Which is very problematic, because not only is it going up against Pixar, it's actually just going up against Disney with Frozen 2. So I see that both How to Train Your Dragon Hidden World and Abominable both being nominated for Best Animated Film, but unfortunately both will lose.
Yeah.
Because it's going to go to one of the Mouse House projects.
More than likely, and you're right. Sometimes it's just not fair. But How to Train Your Dragon is as close to being the entire series is as close to being Pixar without it being Pixar. Yeah. And this is really a series for young and old, and it's a series that you can revisit each movie, and they still work. They're not aging. Like they're becoming really good, timeless animated movies that tell good stories about relationships and about growing up, which I find to be like, again, these are the themes that you usually get in a Pixar movie. And it's not Pixar, and it really works really well.
I agree with you. I think it's a shame. If it was any other year, if it were going up against any other studio, I think they would have a really strong chance of winning. But it's just Toy Story 4, for a trilogy that already was perfect, being a fourth film that actually continued that trend.
And so many people thought, I agree with you. It was unnecessary.
Yeah, everyone
how
thought it
are
was
you going to do
unnecessary.
this?
Yeah.
So I think, too, that lends to the surprise as to how good Toy Story 4 is. There's another movie on here that I think need be discussed, too, and that's Us.
Yes.
Right? So this is Jordan Peele's sophomore directorial movie. And he was coming off of Get Out, which got so much buzz. And again, a movie that was released earlier in that year, but people remembered it. It was out on Blu-ray. A lot of people were continuing to watch it, but it had this buzz going into Oscar talk of that year. This one, Us. Yeah. Us came out. People liked it. They might not have liked it. Got some good reviews, but I don't hear any talk about Us.
Us came out. It was at South by. It opened to pretty rave reviews out of South by. Give it to Universal for premiering it at the festival. They premiered Get Out at Sundance. So there's obviously an audience for this, especially at South by, where they love genre movies. That's the big thing there. Cabin in the Woods, other movies like that have opened. A Quiet Place. So they knew what they were doing. And the thing is that Lupita, who is I think out of this entire movie, if there was any talks about someone being nominated, I would say it would be her for the movie. I don't think anything else and I hate to say this because I've watched this movie again. I just don't think it's that strong. I mean, Get Out was a movie that I watched 4 or 5 times. I picked up something new. There's so many layers to it. Us, I don't. I know we want to think that there's so much to this, but I don't feel like it has as much as Get Out. And Lupita is the only person, but there's such a strong lineup of female performances this year.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to see if she's going to be in the conversation, although I know Universal wants it.
She was fantastic, and this is one of those times we're in complete agreement about this movie. I think Lupita is deserving. She does give a transformational performance, and the Academy loves that kind of thing.
But you have so many of them.
Yeah, I know, but she's playing the dual role. She was fantastic. But again, there's just this time of year, what year did Get Out come out? What did 2017?
Yep.
Okay, the same time in a year in 2017, people were still talking about Get Out, and leading into the Academy race, there was a lot of talk about Get Out. Where I'm not feeling the same thing for Us. And I know awards campaigns are just starting, but I'm not even hearing much about Lupita.
No.
Which to me is kind of a shame because I agree 100%. She's the linchpin of this entire movie. That performance has to work. That characters have to work, and the performance, has to be perfect for you to even approach this movie. And she is motherly and terrifying.
Yeah.
And she does this whole thing with her voice. it's a great performance to watch. I just don't see the same buzz as Get Out.
No, I don't.
I just want to ask a quick question for both of y'all. She plays two characters in this film. Do you think that hinders her chance of any nomination? Does that ever happen with the Oscars, where someone who plays two characters in a movie, does that hinder their chances of getting nominated, or can they get nominated for the movie but both characters?
No, I don't think that would have any. I don't think that would have any effect on the film, because it's not like she's playing like different roles. It's like the same character, just a different version of that character.
Yeah, it wouldn't be what was the movie about the woman who had multiple personalities? Yeah, because you would nominate on.
What do you think of like James McAvoy and like?
Even like Split and such, like you would nominate the performance, like just the performance as a whole, not necessarily like which character you liked better.
Yeah.
So I think if anything, her playing the two roles
would be
as
more
she
of a
played
guarantee,
them,
right, or a lock.
Yeah. Because she's playing two very different characters, as I said. One is protective and motherly, and the other one is just terrifyingly dangerous.
Yeah.
And is a monster. And they play against each other as well. So you praise that performance and what it took to have that happen. So, and by the way, that is Ryan Nielsen.
It's not the voice of God.
Yeah, he is producing our show today, doing all our zeros and ones, so to speak. So just wanted to say thanks for chiming in, Ryan.
Thank you.
And give him credit for chiming in. It's a really solid question, but I don't think in the Academy I have ever seen whenever a person has played dual roles. Even when you take somebody, because I mentioned this, Dr. Strangelove, Peter Sellers, you would nominate Peter Sellers for his role. He played 3 or 4 roles in that movie,
right?
But you would nominate Peter Sellers as an actor in Doctor Strange,
right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because we've been talking a lot about Us and also Get Out, and Daniel Kaluuya, who was in Get Out, is in Queen and Slim, which they are going to be, I think, pushing a lot. Mm-hmm. And this is, I don't mean to come off this way, but this has been there's a very strong lack of people of color this year in terms of in the conversation. I've become much more aware of this problem. And I love the movie Waves. I love the movie Loose, both of which features strong black performances that are not really in conversations right now. And I think the Poor Harriet movie, which I think Cynthia Avevo, I think that's her name, she's so strong in the movie, but the movie itself is not that good. Which if we're going to hold that against her, then we need to hold that against Renee Zellweger for Judy, because it's very similar in terms of that. But I'm starting to notice that. But Queen and Slim, from what I hear, they screened it twice now in L.A., and it's going to have its world premiere at AFI. And I heard Daniel is just terrific in this, right. and I wonder if he's going to be able to sneak in amongst the 5 males, which right now I think is going to be all white.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I think it's a great question, a question that I can't answer without having seen the movie. And not that he's an extremely strong actor. He always, once he's on screen, like, you're captivated. He's got a fantastic presence. The other, Kevin Harrelson Jr.
Yeah, Kelvin. Yeah,
Kelvin. He is, again, Loose. Why people didn't go out to see that performance, and then again we talk about Waves, which he and the gentleman who plays his father in Waves,
Sterling K. Brown, so good.
Is great as a supporting actor. You're right, and. We need people to get to see these movies, and as far as Queen and Slim, the jury's still out as to whether or not, who's going to see the movie and what it'll do and how Universal may try to push it. But you're right. I agree with you. There have been strong performances that, to this point, not a lot of people have seen.
And I want to say this, and I think this is a very big conversation piece that I don't think a lot of people have talked about. I'm not going to give a proper time today, but it's something that I might actually dive into, is that if you have an established director, so, for example, if Beale Street Could Talk did not do well at all financially at the box office, got no buzz outside of our film-going world, but yet people love Barry Jenkins, and there was a lot of conversation about that movie because people trusted Barry Jenkins. It's the same thing with us and Get Out, because people like Jordan Peele.
Sure.
So there's something to be said about, you're not hearing that much buzz about Waves yet. You're not hearing any buzz about Loose. Mm-hmm. And you didn't hear much buzz about Hate You Give last year.
No.
And it's like, there's this, it's weird because unless the name becomes a household name, it's for the black community, I think that's problematic. That's another conversation that we need to have on another day when we have a more diverse panel here.
I agree.
To talk about that, because I think we get so hung up in Hollywood on names.
We do. Instead of, you're right, Scott, you could, instead of the product. And by product, I mean, instead of the cinematic, instead of what the art form is up on screen, when you start focusing on names other than this is really good and what you're paying attention to as to what you're not paying attention to, it tends to be that way. And I think for a studio, it makes it difficult to market sometimes. But again, when I look at a Waves or even a Queen and Slim, that's a little bit of I have to say, a little bit of a risk for Universal, because Daniel himself isn't a talent, so to speak, as of yet. Powerful. But what are you hanging your hat on to get? You want to make money.
First-time filmmaker, too.
Right. So you want to bring people in, and Waves has some good pedigree, both in front and behind the camera, but again, you're right. We should celebrate the product for what it is, and say, who cares about the name? These people did a great job, and there should be more. There should have been more attention to past those Waves and Loose as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see how Queen and Slim does.
So moving on from Universal, very briefly, we're going to talk about Paramount, because Paramount really very briefly only has one film that they're even remotely trying to push for award season, except for Terminator, which I think could go in visual effects categories. I don't think anything else for that movie, but visuals I should probably push that movie for. In terms of Paramount, though, Rocketman, a film that came out in May, did okay at the box office, but I went to an event the other night on the Paramount lot, and then they did a special event just yesterday at the Greek Theater. This is a movie where I think the buzz is slowly starting to
coming
build
back up again.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think kudos to Paramount. Maybe it's, again, they don't have a lot of stuff to push, so they can really put all their money behind this movie. Do you foresee it actually getting any categories?
From the get-go, after watching the movie for the first time, you say Taron for sure.
Yeah.
And I still believe, and I still stand behind that.
Yeah.
His performance is fantastic, as well as Jamie Bell's performance. Yeah. The movie, potentially, here's my thing. For Paramount, it's great that they are now embracing this movie.
Yeah.
They should have been embracing it throughout the entire summer into this fall. They really should have. Because it wasn't getting Bohemian Rhapsody kind of came out of nowhere. Like, even Fox didn't believe that movie was going to be what it became. And it came out at a half-decent time, but the momentum for Bohemian kept on going. And I'm comparing apples to apples here because they're both biopics in a sense, but they're done very, very differently.
Yes.
Done within the music world, done with two very different influential people, and they both have a very different feel about them. And I think for Paramount, they should have just tried to keep the momentum going. Now, God bless Elton John and Taron for their efforts because they have been around all summer.
Oh, yes, they
Taron
have.
has shown up to Elton John concerts. I mean, listen.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
have bonded. They have developed this friendship that goes above and beyond, where yes, Taron will follow him and will show up on stage. And this isn't like the way I look at it is, this isn't like A Star Is Born kind
Right.
of where they were actually having concerts and Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. Like Taron will just show up.
Yeah.
And he can sing as well. And I think that's another thing that we should note about Taron. Look, Rami was fantastic. I think what made Bradley Cooper's performance great is who knew he could sing
Yeah.
and who knew Taron could sing.
Yeah.
And he does such a great job as Elton John. And the other great thing, and this is where I think that it could work, the reimagining of the Elton John songs,
Yes.
I think in Rocketman work because you're not getting a radio version. You're getting brand new versions. Again, it's like listening with brand new ears. You're getting brand new versions of these songs. They're reimagined in such a way that it's great and it gives the musical aspect. And from a musical aspect, I mean like the singing and the dancing, not the music itself. But it had this energetic feel to it. The first 15, 20 minutes, I was like, whoa, that was great. It just captured my attention. And Taron, I think, deserves, and Jamie Bell, I thought, too. It was his best performance.
It's hard because, again, you look at the acting and the supporting performance in this, and this is kind of like the glue that holds the movie together, right? Like,
absolutely.
I mean, you have a movie that is pretty much made to go on the stage. This would be like one of the easiest adaptations to put on Broadway.
That's the first thing you said to me. Like, well, you said it to Ashley, your wife, first.
Yeah.
Granted, but then you leaned over to me and said, they're going to make a Broadway show out of it.
It literally, because it just feels like so perfect for the stage. That being said, like I seeing the kind of reaction that this movie has received, and I remember everyone really enjoying it. And I know another one where critics were like, "Oh, the performances are better than the movie," kind of thing. And I can see that because I think in order to really, really appreciate the movie as a whole, you have to love Elton John. Like, I don't think this is like a movie where, like, I'm a casual Elton John fan, so I'm going to go see it. Or I don't know who Elton John is and I don't know if it has that.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, see, for me, a really good movie should transcend that. And I think a great example of that, is Bohemian Rhapsody. I don't think you had to be a Queen fan to really enjoy
that movie made Queen fans.
Yeah.
Which is funny because as much as people shit on that movie made people Queen fans.
It made We Will Rock You in that album #1 again, which it broke a record again for being #1 album. But again, I will hold that same thing to Blinded by the Light. You don't have to be a Bruce Springsteen fan. And Ryan was actually on The Anatomy of a Movie because he is a huge Bruce Springsteen fan.
Yes, indeed.
But you don't have to be to enjoy the movie. Yes, if you're an Elton John fan, I think you could maybe get a little bit more out of Rocketman. Same with Blinded, same with Bohemian Rhapsody. But to me, they overcome that because they utilize the music in such a way that maybe on the ride home you might stream either artist to listen to them. And I think Rocketman, too, overcomes it because just the way that it framed the music, I just think that it really works. You didn't necessarily have to be. I think, I'll be honest though, in making the parallel with Bohemian Rhapsody, which also deals with gay relationships. Rocketman, just to put it bluntly, was much heavier. It's what people complained wasn't in Bohemian Rhapsody, but yet it seemed to turn them away from Rocketman, which to me is just like an irony. Like, you can't. Where's the middle ground? Like, if you complain about it not being, it's like, they could have gone darker or deeper, and then in Bohemian, it's like, I couldn't take it. It's like, well, I don't get it because Rocketman, really, it doesn't shy away from it, and also the fact. Too, it should be noted that Elton John so supported Rocketman.
I'm telling you, I listened to him speak the other night and hearing about he specifically said 3 scenes that he felt so personally moved when he watched them. I can't remember every single one. It was the first time he seen Taron perform, and then it was like 2 other ones. One of which was one of the problematic relationship with Bernie, where they were like fighting. He said, "Oh my God, that was like so true to life." He's like, "That moment happened in my life," and I think that's the difference between this movie and Bohemian Rhapsody, is that the person who the movie was about was actively involved in making the movie, as opposed to Bohemian Rhapsody, whereas like some of the band members were there, but we don't want it to make us look bad, so we're going to support some of this stuff.
And then it became really big. It's like, we're all in.
We're all in.
We're in.
So that's where I think it draws the line. But I think I do still see, maybe not the Academy, but I do see it. I feel like it's going to be a lock for musical comedy at Golden Globes, and also I do see Taron for sure getting it for Golden Globes, and possibly Gillian for supporting.
I hope so. And, Jesus Christ, we've got 50 slots, 50 Best Picture slots from the Academy.
Yeah.
That's why, it could sneak in depending on how many they actually use, which, like, if you have 12, just use all effing 12 for crying out loud. So enough of that.
Yeah.
Malarkey.
So moving on to the last one real quick, we want to go into Lionsgate. And Lionsgate officially, just to put this out there, has one movie that they're pushing, but we're going to bring into a conversation another movie that me and Demetri deeply, very passionately feel should be in this conversation. But the movie that they're pushing right now, and you probably heard about it because it's been the talk of the town for the last week, is the movie Bombshell, which is directed by Jay Roach, and starring Charlize Theron, Margot Robbie, and Nicole Kidman. I had the honor of actually seeing it at the second official screening of this movie at the GGA earlier in this week, and this is the quintessential Me Too movie of this time. I mean, like, if any movie speaks to the Me Too generation, it's this movie. Charlize Theron is fantastic in it. You even though it's a very risky and controversial move for her to play Megyn Kelly, I do foresee her getting a lot of love and a lot of praise for this performance.
But did you find her unrecognizable as Megyn Kelly?
I did find her unrecognizable in the movie. Very much so. Really transformative performance.
Which, again, the Academy loves.
Which, again, and now when you talk about that, and we've talked about that in this show already, we had Ellen John, Taron Egerton as Ellen John, and Lupita and Us, and Joaquin and this, and blah, blah, blah.
Many transformations
this year, that it's going to be like hard to figure out what they're going to give. Yeah. If you were to ask me personally, I know people love Renee Zellweger and Judy, and she's great in it, and that movie, there's elements of it that I really loved. Again, very similar feelings to that as I felt to Jojo Rabbit, where I just felt like something just needed to be fleshed out more. I would give it a Charlize, personally. I mean, I don't think the Academy is going to.
Really?
But I think I would give it to it, because I think it's a bold performance. It's someone who's not likable. Right. They have history as racism and stuff like that. It's not this cookie cutter like, oh, here's this innocent woman who's been like, sexually assaulted and stuff like that. It's actually someone who's like kind of a jerk. Right. And is not someone who we really ultimately want to root for, but at the same time had something shitty happen to her. So it's a conflict with this movie where you kind of like, this person's not the greatest person,
but they didn't deserve to have that.
They didn't, right? And that's where there's this fine line, and why I think this movie, especially that character, really kind of stands out.
Yeah, and this is the first year in a long time for Lionsgate that they've had anything to push for Academy for an awards.
Not really, Lionsgate. They did La La Land.
Well, how many years ago was that though?
Only that was Get Out,
and it lost.
Well, not in all. Lost to the big one, but not to everything.
Yeah, but but that was like they've they used to be able to push out
2016,
a lot.
right?
I think so. Yeah. They used to be able to push. Well, there was a time when there were lots, like almost every year, they had something to nominate with. So, it's good for them to have this Bombshell. I think it's coming out again when we look at Society. This is set today. So, it's going to be very interesting is how I haven't seen Bombshell, but how will Bombshell look to audiences 5 years from now? Well, let's do this. Mm-hmm. Anything beyond 5 years, how people will look back and look back at this time period. Personally, I'm not sure that history is going to be kind to us.
Yes.
So it'll be very interesting. So.
Yeah. And then the last movie we want to talk about, which is not getting an awards push yet. Maybe they're going to change things, but Knives Out, which I think should get Best Picture, Best Director. I don't know who you would put in the cast for where they would play. I think it's an ensemble cast, so Critics' Choice, our award ceremony. I think you should definitely push that for that. But yeah, I think that it's a big missed opportunity if they don't push this movie.
I couldn't agree with you more. This still remains my #1 movie of the year thus far, just for the mere fact that it entertains.
Yes.
But it entertains in such a clever, sinister, mystery way. It's a whodunit. And we haven't had a whodunit as this movie. I mean, yes, there was Murder in the Orient Express, right? Which is a whodunit mystery. But this is more of a throwback to those Agatha Christie's that they did in the 70s, going into the 80s, right? And it was so well thought out. It should get screenplay.
Oh, yeah, screenplay. I totally screenplay, yeah.
It should get direction or misdirection, let's say that. And performances, I could definitely look at Daniel Craig, because this is one of those performances that he takes his character from Logan Lucky and just kicks it up notches unknown to mankind, as Emerald would say. He's just amazing. He's Hercule Poirot meets Columbo, and he's just brilliant. As far as the supporting cast, Christopher Plummer is amazing. Chris Evans, it's so breathtakingly awesome that he's not playing Steve Rogers and that he is this different character. I love to see him he's great as Captain America, but he really shines in this movie. Don Johnson, Toni Collette, Jamie Lee Curtis. Everybody brings their A game. Nobody falls in the shadow. And the girl that's in it, the lead character.
The girl from Blade Runner?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. She too is quite amazing, and it puts a spin on the whodunit.
This is why I think to me, if I was running this awards campaign, why I would not try to pin people against one another.
No.
And that's why I would actually just do it as an ensemble piece. Because they
don't do that in the Academy.
I know they don't do it in the Academy, which that's something that maybe they should talk about and change. Because a lot of other award ceremonies do that, and I think it's important to do that because a cast to work together and all of them to shine. This is a perfect example of that.
There hasn't been a movie like Knives Out,
right?
And trust me, it does turn the whodunit on its heels, and it does it in a fresh, entertaining way. And yet another movie that holds itself up to today's social topics. And it does it in such an entertaining way from beginning to end. I was thoroughly 100% entertained. And again, it definitely gets my high five for sure. But Daniel Craig to me and Ryan Johnson, he need director, actor right there, and screenplay, original screenplay. So for me, for Lionsgate, it would be a shame not to push any one of those things going on forward for Knives Out.
Sounds
good.
good.
Shame.
Sounds good.
Right?
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. I agree. I think I'm shocked that right now it's not on their awards side.
Original screenplay?
I know.
What is more original? I mean, Parasite, right? If you want to say. Foreign film, yes. But from an American standpoint, original screenplay at the very least.
Yeah, 100%. So that's it for this episode. Dimitri, where can they find you?
Hey, well, thank you for having me on. I love this kind of talk. You can find me here on Popcorn Talk Network's Anatomy of a Movie, which we're back. We're actually getting around to filming our Joker Part 2. You can find me on the Twitters at Demetri Panos and an occasional co-host on Meet the Movie Press, all here on the Popcorn Talk Network.
Sounds good. You can find me over here, of course, on Film Critics Weekly. You can find me at Meet the Movie Press. Also today on Anatomy of a Movie, which you should just stay tuned right now because it's coming on now. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue our award season talk next week. Thanks for watching. Take care.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.